Ice Age shaped the world we live in today. A mass of water poured into the oceans as the ice caps melted. Sea level rose 400 feet. Floods swallowed up the best coastal lands on Earth. All traces of the people who'd lived on them vanished beneath the sea. Could this mass flooding have been the inspiration for hundreds of flood myths from all around the world? We're told the flood myths are just that, myths, and should not be taken seriously. But in India, new evidence from the bottom of the sea is showing substance to the myths. But even if the myths are 11,000 years old, they don't help us search for a lost Indian civilization. For that I still need a major underwater archaeological site in the areas that geology shows were flooded at the end of the Ice Age. Researching Indian archaeological journals, I found a neglected study describing a sunken ruin. It was in an area that I knew had been flooded at the end of the Ice Age, and there's a flood myth pointing straight to it. Here, deep in the Tamil part of South India, one of the most sacred sites is the Meenakshi temple in the ancient city of Madurai. Tamil myths say the temple was established by the survivors of a flood. According to the myths, the survivors had belonged to an earlier and highly advanced civilization. Its most famous achievement before it was swallowed by the sea was a great academy or sangam for the perfection of human knowledge.
Sangam means collection. People come together to bring out a great work.
What happened to it to exist?
Okay, that is, there's a big land. So many people were there. The sea came in and it swallowed the whole thing. That's what people say.
Do we have any descriptions of what sort of land it was?
That is the most ancient continent in the whole world. The best and the ancient civilization existed there. And it belongs to Tamil.
Right, and this is about 10,000 years ago.
10,000 years.
The Sangam flood myth hints that the remains of a lost civilization more than 10,000 years old are waiting to be discovered underwater around the shores of South India. In fact, the dates given in the myth go back to 11,600 years ago. That's the same time frame given by Plato for the submergence of Atlantis in another ocean. And Ice Age science confirms that huge amounts of additional land were available all around the coast of India in the precise period signaled by the Sangam myth.
So you can see, if you focus down here in the southern tip of India and Sri Lanka, it looks more or less as it does
pretty much as it looks now.
Proceed now to 10.6, 12.4, 16.4.
Well, they're extraordinarily different from how they are today. I mean, we're looking at almost a continuous landmass.
So when the ice sheets were at their biggest, sea level was at
Right. So the next step of my journey is to go to the coast, to search under the waves for the hidden history of that lost, flooded terrain. This is the Granite Shore Temple at Mahabalipuram. It's overlooking the Bay of Bengal in southeast India and is one of several dozen extraordinary rock-hewn structures scattered along the coast. first came to this seashore when I was 5 years old. In fact, I learned to swim here. It always stayed in my memory as a mysterious place with its wonderful granite temples. The structures we can see today are thought to be about 1,300 years old, but the local myth has it that they commemorate an earlier and now lost city. The city builder was a proud and arrogant giant named Bali. And the story goes that he made a city so beautiful, luxurious and ornate, its temples so tall, its reliefs so rich, that the gods became jealous.
They sent orders to the god of the sea to let loose his billows. The city was at once overflowed by that furious element.
And the lost city of Bali isn't just an old myth. Local fishermen know all about it because it affects their livelihood. First of all, how did you come to know that there are these structures underwater? How did you learn about them?
உங்களுக்கு அங்க மண்டபம் இருக்குதுன்னு எப்படி தெரியும்? வலை போட்டதால தெரியுமா இல்ல சாதாரணமாவே தெரியுமா?
நான் அந்த காயினை போடும்போது
When we throw the nets, they get caught in these pillars.
இந்த வாத்துக்கால் இப்படி போகுது. அந்த ஆளுக்கு மேல இருக்குது.
When we tug on the nets, they break. No fish, no pillars.
எங்களுக்கு வெறி கவர் வருது.
So how many structures underwater?
நிறைய இருக்குன்னு சொல்றீங்களே இந்த மாதிரி எவ்வளவு இருக்குன்னு நினைக்கிறீங்க நீங்க இந்த மாதிரி கட்டடம்?
பெரிய பெரிய கட்டடங்கள் இருக்குது. அது எங்க நம்ம இது போல
It's not like that. There are stones all on top of one another, dilapidated.
Come look together.
Yes, jumbled together.
I can't get permission from the Indian government to dive at Mahabalipuram, but I am able to dive a little further south at Pumpahar. The same experts from the National Institute of Oceanography who I worked with at Dwarka have found a structure that is truly mysterious. It lies almost 3 miles from the present shoreline at a depth of more than 70 feet. It's important because geologists tell us it was submerged about 11,000 years ago when sea levels rose. Archaeologists know of no culture of that time capable of building something so large. And it's mysterious because it was flooded at a date when Tamil myths say a high civilization flourished on land that was later swallowed up by the sea. Here, as at Mahabalipuram, underwater structures provide perfect shelters and breeding grounds for fish. Dr. Gower explains before the dive that archaeologists don't believe in lost civilizations 11,000 years old.
To construct a so big structure, I think it's about 40 meters in length.
It's a big structure.
Yeah. When we come to here in this particular area, if you see the structure, such a big one, it means they have a very great technology.
As we get ready for the first dive, it dawns on me how much I have at stake in the next few hours. Because if the structure I'm about to see really is more than 11,000 years old, then it is, almost by definition, the work of a lost civilization. We reach bottom at about 70 feet. The visibility is pretty bad. But soon Sundaresh brings me to a sheer wall about twice the height of a man that juts up out of this ancient inundated plain. It doesn't look like it belongs here naturally at all. Sundaresh draws my attention to several heavily overgrown courses of masonry.
Have you checked Martin? Incomplete.
A little further along, Sundaresh points out a second area of partially exposed construction blocks. As we continue along the U-shaped structure, I see that almost every inch of it is draped in fishermen's nets. It feels a bit eerie, Looking at these straight lines on the walls, you can almost make out courses of masonry. I'm in no doubt that we're looking at a man-made structure here. There is a lot of growth on it. On reviewing the dive on deck, what convinces me is these clear courses of individual blocks. And the way that the U-shaped structure sticks up so unnaturally from the flat sea bed. A computer model of the structure from measurements taken by the NIO reveals the overview that the murky waters hide from divers and shows that other structures stand nearby. Perhaps it was an enclosure for ritual purposes. Back on deck, Kamlesh Vora, the expedition leader, confirms that further anomalies have been identified in the same area.
There are another 4 structures around, north of this place and south of this place, where we feel that, or we believe, or we know from the people saying that there are submerged structures below. This is one place, maybe in isolation. But if 3 or 4 structures along the coastline, if they give us some good unified...
And if you can plot the relationship of the structures to each other.
We should put all the data together. And
well, it seems to me an area that deserves more research.
Mysterious.
Mysterious, exactly. A couple of months after I dived at Pumpahar, a news story, not picked up elsewhere, appeared in the Indian press announcing the discovery of 2 lost cities 120 feet under the sea off northwest India. Precisely where Glenn Milne's maps had shown a huge loss of land at the end of the Ice Age. I felt as though I was being shown the Holy Grail. Nothing could stop me from going there. In 2001, a team of geologists from India's National Institute of Ocean Technology made a series of startling discoveries in the Gulf of Cambay. Their sonar readings show evidence for 2 huge cities 120 feet underwater. And a sample they've collected from the seabed has been carbon dated to the end of the Ice Age. The NIOT experts aren't archaeologists. They were doing pollution studies in the Gulf. But what they found is of massive archaeological significance. Could these flooded cities be the proof I've been looking for, which journeyed to archaeology?
Initially, when we went, we thought probably we'll be on an early Harappan site. But after seeing all the artifacts and evidences what we have collected, it looks that they are before the Harappan period.
Which means, in the end, that history is going to have to be looked at again.
Definitely. Maybe this is the beginning of a major discovery for the world.
I think so. I think so. It's the scale of the sites which is so exciting.
It looks like a twin city or a twin metropolis of ancient times.
Right. The cities are located right in the area that Glenn Milne's sea level rise data shows was flooded between 7,000 and 8,000 years ago. This was at the very end of the Ice Age and was the last of 3 major pulses of meltwater release that have been identified by geologists.
One city is more than 8 kilometers long. Other one is almost 9 kilometers.
These are enormous.
Enormous, yeah. Both of them appears to be along 2 river courses.
A natural place for humans to settle.
Can have a look here.
This is a treasure trove. Next, Dr. Badranarian took me to see some of the artifacts they've recovered by dredging the underwater sites.
These are micropools, where you can see various shaped thin objects, well polished, to use them for various purposes.
This is like a swimming
pool. You can see it is the shape of a deer they have made.
Well, it's very interesting because it's carved the same on both sides. Human remains include a fossilized jawbone and vertebrae. And the artifacts show that these people were skilled in making pottery, jewelry, and other ornaments. This seems to have been almost like turned on some sort of...
Yeah, it is. It appears to be a very good artifact. Probably they had a sort of hand instrument to turn all these things. If you see, That's the whole also they have made through that.
And this hole runs all the way through it.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah. So this is absolutely definitively a man-made object.
Yeah, we did not know what it was.
Most startling of all, a stone slab was discovered with raised markings which could push back the date of the invention of writing to the end of the Ice Age.
Yeah. This is some of the images we have picked up in the...
Sub-bottom profiling, a technique that detects materials buried beneath the seabed, reveals the city's massive foundations.
In between the seabed, you'll be seeing soft material.
Right.
This is the foundation of the
Which has quite a different character from the rest. So this is building foundations.
building foundation.
Right.
And you can see that they are very regularly spaced.
Indeed, which are walls.
Yeah,
really.
walls.
But a bigger surprise came from the side-scan sonar, a beam passed along the seabed to detect solid objects. The images show sophisticated geometrical structures. It's looking down on the seabed, these very right-angled structures.
Yeah, these are about 77 meter by about 40 meter.
Yeah.
Actually, there's a series of steps going down.
Looks like
it's
building.
not anything that you normally come across in a marine, this
No,
one.
no.
It is obviously man-made.
Yeah.
And
But Dr. Badranarian had something even more spectacular to show me, which looks like a citadel.
something very different than what you see now.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
You see very square features. And
You can see a lovely series of right angles here.
They are all platform-like features.
Yeah.
The present length of this is about 98 meter.
We've created a computer simulation of the citadel. It gives some idea of the ambition and extent of the great buildings for so long lost beneath the waves. How long might this society have existed before it was flooded? All I want to do is go diving right away. But it's December 2001, there's political tension in the neighborhood, and Indian naval intelligence has politely but firmly declined my request to dive. Even the NIOT scientists themselves haven't dived yet, and until they do, or someone does, a question mark must hang over the claims that are being made. But the case is getting stronger all the time. A month after I met them, the NIOT released the results of carbon dating on the artifacts recovered from the sunken cities. The results caused a sensation around the world. One of the objects was dated to 7,500 BC. That's 4,500 years before the cities of Mesopotamia and Egypt. How long would it have taken a civilization that was already here 9,500 years ago to build cities on this scale? We could be looking at a previously unknown high culture in existence around the coastal margins of India from perhaps as much as 12,000 years ago. And that's precisely the period when the U-shaped structure at the bottom of the Bay of Bengal was last on dry land. If we take the ancient flood myths seriously, instead of writing them off as primitive fantasies, as so many archaeologists do, then they can point us towards new discoveries, discoveries that could rewrite history. I'm going to head east to put to the test one more set of myths, and the mysterious people who we already know were doing extraordinary things at the end of the Ice Age. More next week, same time. To get Graham Hancock's book, Underworld, price £20, call 08701234344 or go to channel4.com history, where Graham will also be taking part in a live web chat, given just a few minutes. Now, a blast of film action-adventure is up next. Robert Rodriguez gives his El Mariachi the Hollywood treatment, and it stands up as one brilliant remake. Antonio Banderas, Salma Hayek, and a typically informed Steve Buscemi. It's an absolute rush with Desperado.